Hello, everyone. Our movements have always adapted to survive. We've learned to organize under repression, to communicate despite censorship, to persist when the odds are stacked against us. Today, that adaptation includes understanding digital security. But I don't want to talk about digital security as if it's just another technical burden we have to carry. Instead, I want us to explore it as what it really means. When we hear digital security, many of us immediately think about passwords and antivirus software. But digital security is about so much more than just protecting data. It's fundamentally about reclaiming our autonomy in digital spaces that were designed, often, to extract, monitor, and control us. At its core, digital security is about keeping our data, our identity, and our digital activities safe from hackers, surveillance, and all kinds of unwanted interference. And for us as activists, especially those of us working in places where civic space is shrinking, taking digital security seriously isn't just a good idea. It's absolutely essential. It is essential for our own safety, for our group's safety, and frankly, for the very survival of our movements. Now, digital security encompasses key three interconnected domains, and I want to emphasize that word, interconnected, because these areas work together. There is a secure communication. This is how we organize our campaigns, coordinate our action, and share sensitive information without exposing our networks to infiltration or surveillance. Second, we have device safety, protecting the phones, laptops, and other devices that literally hold years of organizing history, our personal relationships, and our strategic planning from spyware, theft, or forced disclosure. And third, data protection, understanding what actually happens when our personal information gets compromised, and building systems that minimize long term harm to ourselves and our movements. So, why digital security is so important and why it is fundamentally human rights work? As human rights defenders and activists, especially those of us working in countries under authoritarian control or in oppressive environments, much of our advocacy happens online. And this isn't by choice. Often, digital spaces are among the few remaining venues we have for organizing and campaigning. Yet, many activists remain completely unaware of how platforms like Telegram, WhatsApp, or TikTok can compromise not just their digital privacy, but their physical security. Allow me to explain why understanding digital security is absolutely essential. Digital surveillance is often, and I cannot stress this enough, often the very first step in campaigns to identify, track, and target activists. It's the entry point for repression. When we set up secure systems properly, we preserve critical evidence of both our work and the threats we face. This documentation can be crucial later. Here's something that might surprise you. Group security depends entirely on individual security. A collective is only as safe as its least protected member. Think about that for a moment. And this brings us to a concept we need to remember. Digital safety is community care. When you protect yourself digitally, you are protecting everyone connected to you. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, but I have nothing to hide. Why should I worry about all of this? Let me tell you why this argument completely misses the point. This isn't about having something to hide. It's about having something to protect. And we all have something to protect. Mass surveillance is a tool designed to map our relationships, identify our networks, and store information that can be weaponized against us or against our comrades in the future. Even if you are not currently targeted, even if your network seems safe today, that can change overnight. Remember what I said about digital safety being community care? A group chat is only as safe as the person in it with the lowest digital security measures. If you don't take care of your data, you might compromise others. The more information that's accessible to hostile actors, the easier it becomes for them to frame people for crimes they didn't commit. So, protecting your information isn't just about you, it's about your future community, and the future of the movement we're all part of. Now, let's talk about what we're actually up against, because these aren't theoretical concerns. When we think about digital threats, it is important to remember that these don't just affect individuals. They have the power to disrupt entire movements through coordinated digital suppression. Governments and corporations sometimes ban platforms like WhatsApp or Telegram, black out the internet in entire regions, or force telecom companies to hand over user data. In Myanmar, Telegram and Facebook were blocked overnight to prevent communication during protests. In Sudan, the internet was shut down to stop protesters from organizing. SIM card registration laws, like in Uganda, force people to link their phone numbers to their IDs, making surveillance effortless for authorities. Beyond these immediate tactics, we also face broader infrastructure surveillance. Government owned telecommunication services can easily monitor regular phone calls and text messages. And usually, private telecommunications companies also provide information to governments as well. These examples show us that digital repression is a deliberate, calculated tactic to control dissent and disrupt our movements. But understanding these tactics help us prepare, resist, and find alternative ways to keep our movement strong and connected even under severe digital pressure. At the individual level, we face equally serious challenges. The most common digital threats facing human rights defenders and activists include several key vulnerabilities. Unsecured networks present major risk. Using public Wi Fi without protection exposes your messages to prying eyes and enables digital interception of communications, passwords, and sensitive data during activism. Social engineering through phishing attacks attempts to steal sensitive information through fake emails, messages, or websites designed to look legitimate. These attacks are getting more sophisticated every year. Account hacking represents a growing vulnerability that can have devastating consequences. When social media accounts, bank accounts, or email accounts are compromised, attackers can access years of personal information, financial details, and communication history. They can also use these accounts to impersonate you, send malicious messages to your contacts, or access other linked accounts. Harassment due to public information is another serious concern we face. Information about our gender, religion, sexual orientation, family status, or other personal details can be weaponized against us. This information, often available through social media profiles or public records, it becomes evidence for targeted harassment campaigns designed to intimidate us into silence. Legal implications arise when our digital activities are monitored and used against us in legal proceedings. Digital evidence, from social media posts to communication records, can be taken out of context and used to build criminal cases or civil lawsuits against activists, even when our actions were entirely legal. And here is something that often weighs heavily on our minds: risk transfer to family and friends. Our digital security choices don't just affect us, they can put our loved ones in danger. When our contacts, photos, or communications are compromised, family members and friends who aren't even involved in activism can become targets for harassment, surveillance, or worse, simply because of their connection to us. So, with all these threats at both the movement and the individual level, how do we begin to protect ourselves? This is where digital risk assessment becomes crucial. When we talk about digital risk assessment, we're really talking about understanding and mapping out our vulnerabilities, our adversaries, and the value of what we're protecting. Think of yourself as the strategist for the security of your own movement. Let me break this down into 5 key questions that we all need to ask ourselves. First, what do I need to protect? Before you can safeguard yourself or your community, you need to identify your valuable information. Are you protecting contact lists of activists, the documentation of abuses you've collected, personal stories, your plans for upcoming actions or campaigns? And here's something many of you forgot. Think not only about obvious files and messages, but also metadata. Things like who contacts whom, when, and from where. In several movements worldwide, attackers have used metadata, not actual message content, to identify links in activist networks. Second, who do I need to protect it from? Ask yourself, who might actually want this information? Is it government surveillance agencies, corporate actors threatened by your advocacy, other non state actors, or even trolls and harassers? Is it political opposition? Understanding your adversaries helps you estimate their resources and methods. For example, if you're working in a country with powerful cyber police, you should assume they have advanced tools. If harassment comes from online groups, their approach might involve phishing or doxing. Third, how much do they want that information? And how easy is it for them to get it? Some information is highly valuable to your adversaries, like a list of protest organizers or evidence of corruption. Ask yourself, how motivated are they? Will they spend money, time, or technical resources to get it? Remember, tools like Pegasus spyware are expensive, but governments are willing to invest in them. Consider too how easy you're making it for them. Is everything stored in the cloud? Do you use strong passwords? Sometimes a clever adversary only needs one peak point, such as unprotected group chat, to get what they want. Here's a sobering example. In several documented cases in Latin America, phone theft, not sophisticated hacking, led to activist networks being exposed simply because devices weren't encrypted. Fourth, what happens if they do get it? This is about imagining worst case scenarios, and it isn't paranoia, it's preparedness. Could people be arrested, harassed, or blackmailed? Will your contact list be at risk? Could sensitive evidence get lost? Or could disinformation be spread using your real data? Remember, sometimes the impact isn't immediate. Collected data may be stored and weaponized in the future, as we've seen in prolonged crackdowns in places like Egypt and Myanmar. And finally, what am I willing to do to stop that from happening? Security is never about eliminating all risk that's possible. It's about finding the right balance for your context. Ask yourself, are you willing to switch to encrypted tools, even if it's less convenient? Will you adopt a two factor authentication or set up password manager? Can you convince your team to agree on shared safety practices? Being honest about your capacity helps you develop routines you'll actually stick with. As you work through this assessment, keep in mind 2 crucial considerations. First, the capability of external actors. Some adversaries have advanced resources. Think Pegasus spyware or state mandated SIM registration always assesses realistically what tools they are likely to use. Second, the impact of exposure. Not all information carries the same risk. A public flyer is very different from an internal strategy document. Prioritize and tailor your defenses to the most sensitive data you have. And let me leave you with one final example to bring all this with you. Think of activists in Uganda, where government surveillance capabilities skyrocketed after mandatory SIM registration. What once felt like private phone calls suddenly became accessible to authorities, leading arrests and persecution. But here's the encouraging part. Those activists who had assessed these risks early and started using encrypted messaging, dramatically reduced their exposure and that of their networks. They were able to continue their important work because they had been prepared.
Having assessed the risks we face and the context we work in, we must now translate that knowledge into concrete protective measures. Digital security is not about downloading every tool we hear about or trying to learn every new app. It is about choosing the right mix of practices and technologies that fit our needs and that we can realistically maintain in our daily work as human rights defenders. The best way to think about digital security is as layered defense. Each measure on its own is useful, but when combined, they reinforce each other. By stacking these protective layers, we create resilience. This way, even if one measure fails, others are still in place to protect our devices, our communications, and the sensitive information we hold. Our first layer of defense has to be our devices. Our phones and laptops are the central storage of our work. They carry years of communication, strategic documents, networks of contacts, and sensitive files. If someone gains access to a single device, they could undermine all the other protections we put in place. That is why device safety forms the foundation of digital security. One important step in digital security is anti malware protection. Malware is a malicious software designed to spy, steal, or damage the devices or the data in it. So, installing a reputable anti-malware such as Avera, AVG, or Malwarebytes helps detect and block malicious programs before they can take hold. These tools should be set to run in real time, with full system scans scheduled regularly. Equally critical are system updates. Many attacks happen because of old software vulnerabilities. Turning on automatic updates for both your operating system and your apps is one of the simplest but most effective ways to close those gaps. Remembering that restoring your phone or laptop regularly allows pending updates to install properly. To ensure safety of our devices while in public spaces, it is best to use privacy screen. Besides, setting your screen to automatically lock after a few seconds or maximum after 2 minutes, using and enabling remote wipe tools like Find My Device or Find My iPhone help prevent casual access or protect your data if a device is lost. Authentication, or how we unlock our devices, is another crucial piece. While fingerprint or facial recognition logins are convenient, they can be forced in certain situations. In contrast, strong alphanumeric passwords are far harder to compile and much safer. It is essential that devices have its own unique password and change passwords of our devices and all the apps, specifically those holding sensitive information, quarterly. Finally, we must also consider browser security. Browsers like Google Chrome collect extensive data and are not well suited for sensitive work. Safer alternatives include Firefox with privacy extensions, Brave, or Tor browser. Another important part of digital security is secure communication, because communication is the backbone of organizing and also one of the biggest vulnerabilities. When it comes to messaging, Signal and WhatsApp are currently the most reliable options because they use end-to-end encryption. It is also worth mentioning that standard SMS and phone calls have no encryption at all, so these are never safe for sensitive communication. But regardless of the app we use, there are practices we should always follow. For example, always enable disappearing messages and set up recovery pins. And remember, don't use chat history as your archive. If it is important, store it securely elsewhere. And whenever you go online, use a VPN on both your phone and laptop to hide your internet traffic from authorities and internet providers. An extra layer of safety is two factor authentication. Instead of relying only on a password, it adds a second step, usually a code sent to your phone. Two factor authentication is like having both a key and a code to unlock safe. As activists, we usually coordinate in group chats, whether it is organizing a protest, planning a campaign, or simply staying connected across different locations. Group chats are fast and convenient, but they also come with serious risks. That is why it is essential to set group security norms from the beginning. Here are a few points we need to keep in mind. Keep the group size small. Larger groups mean higher risk. Agree on what can and what cannot be shared inside the group. Vet new members carefully before adding them. Audit the memberships regularly and remove inactive or compromised accounts. And finally, if you are not sure everyone can be trusted, don't share sensitive information in that group. So far, we talked about keeping our private communications secure through messaging apps, VPNs, and two factor authentications. But of course, not all of our communication is private. A lot of our activism lives on social media. So these platforms serve dual functions in our work as human rights defenders. They provide essential tools for advocacy, organizing, and public communication, while simultaneously creating significant security vulnerabilities through data collection, surveillance features, and public exposure of our activities. To make this clearer, I have broken social media safety down into four main groups. First up is account security. Securing our social media accounts begins with implementing the same fundamental security practices we use for other digital platforms. Strong, unique passwords stored in password managers provide essential protection against unauthorized access, while two factor authentication adds an additional security layer that dramatically reduces your vulnerability to account compromise. For your account security purpose, regularly check which devices are logged in and remove any you don't recognize or is no longer needed. The next step is being mindful of your account privacy. Always keep personal accounts private and on public profiles. Remove or hide personal details such as phone numbers and email addresses. It is also important to limit app permissions and revoke access that isn't necessary. Thirdly, take a careful look at what is already out there. This brings us to content audits. Remember to review your old posts, your activities such as your likes and comments, and delete anything that could put you or your colleagues at risk. And don't forget to check photos and tags as well. Being intentional about what you share is critical in social media. Even when posts seem harmless, they often carry metadata. Details such as the time, location, or devices used. That can give away far more than you intend. So always remember your photo and videos metadata and location sharings are off. Besides, avoid sharing distinctive backgrounds that reveal locations because adversaries can use Google Images, Thin Eyes to track photo origins and locations of your content. Avoid posting in real time about activism related activities and consider face blurring for sensitive group photos. And finally, think about your engagement practices. How you interact online matters as much as what you post. Avoid arguments with trolls or hostile actors. It is often safer to thank them politely or simply ignore them rather than getting pulled into conflicts. So, it is best to consider your overall online presence. Curate your presence carefully. keeping in mind that what you share today might be used against you tomorrow. Every post, every comment, and interaction contributes to how you are perceived. So act strategically and intentionally. Earlier, we mentioned about disappearing messages, encryption, and VPNs as best practices to protect your communications and devices. Now, let's take a closer look at each of these tools so you can understand how to use them effectively in your work and why they matter for staying safe online. Disappearing messages are a feature in messaging apps that automatically delete conversations after a set period. This reduces the amount of sensitive material stored on your device, lowering the risk if your phone is lost, stolen, or hacked. To use them, enable the disappearing messages option in secure apps like Signal or WhatsApp. You can usually set a timer, for example, messages delete after 24 hours, 7 days, or a custom period. Remember that even with disappearing messages, screenshots or backups can still exist, so always remain cautious with your sensitive content. Returning to encryption, it is a process that transforms information into a coded format, making it unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the proper key or password. Think of it like locking all your files in a box. Without the key, anyone who finds that box can't make sense of what is inside. On your devices, encryption can protect everything from messages to documents and photos. For smartphones, iPhones are encrypted by default once you set a passcode, and most Androids have full disk encryption built in. On computers, you can use File Vault on Mac or BitLocker on Windows to secure your entire drive. Once enabled, it works in the background automatically. There is also file level encryption, which lets you encrypt individual files or folders. This is especially useful for sensitive documents, reports, or source information. Tools like VeraCrypt allows you to create encrypted folders. 7-zip can compress files with AES-256 encryption. And encrypted cloud services like Proton Drive or Trezor ensures your files stay protected even when stored online. For messaging, end-to-end encryption ensures that only you and the recipient can read your messages. Apps like Signal encrypt messages, calls, and medias automatically. To maximize protection, combine encryption with a strong device security, secure backups, and careful handling of sensitive files. Let's talk about VPNs, or virtual private networks. A VPN creates a secure tunnel for our network connections by encrypting our traffic and masking our location from local network monitors. For human rights defenders in countries with surveillance or restrictions, this makes it much harder for authorities to track your online activity or block access to certain sites. VPN protection becomes particularly critical when we use public Wi-Fi networks, which often lack security protections and can be easily monitored by anyone with basic technical skills. However, we must understand that VPNs protect us primarily from local network surveillance. They cannot provide comprehensive protection against sophisticated state-level monitoring or protect communications once they reach their final destinations. To use a VPN, install a trusted app and make sure it is active whenever you go online. Services like Proton VPN offer free tiers that provide basic protections suitable for many human rights defenders, although paid services often provide enhanced features and better performance. It is important to note that in some countries, VPN usage is restricted or even illegal. If you are in a high-risk environment, check local laws first and consider using VPNs with stealth or obfuscation features that make traffic harder to detect. To conclude, digital security is not just about individual action. You can follow every best practice, but if someone else in your group does not, everyone is exposed, meaning that one weak account can compromise the whole network. That is why it is best to treat security as a shared responsibility. Talk openly about it with colleagues, remind each other, and build a culture where secure practices are the norm. And this way, everyone's safety becomes interconnected.
Before we close today's session, I want to remind you that you're not alone in this work. Protecting ourselves and our communities can feel overwhelming, but there are resources and people ready to support you. If you are a climate justice activist or any human rights defender and find yourself in urgent need of help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can contact us directly through the email, Signal, or WhatsApp numbers displayed on this slide. Even if we might not be able to provide direct assistance, we can refer you to our trusted partners and networks who specialize in different kinds of support, whether it's legal aid, digital security help, psychosocial care, or emergency relocation. Your safety and well being matter deeply, so please bookmark these contacts and share them with your peers in need. Activism is a journey we take together. So remember, reaching out is a sign of strength.